And now that Title 42 has ended, we ask, how will it impact the locals in the area? Joining us now is Javier Palmares, founder and CEO of U.S. Hispanic Business Council. Javier, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Tiffany. How are you?
And with Title 42 now ended and the expected flood of illegal immigrants, how will that impact local small businesses and communities?
Well, certainly, I've been calling for Title 42 to remain in place. I'm shocked that they would allow it to expire, but that's the situation we're dealing with right now. The local systems, whether that be the educational system, the judicial system, the legal system, the medical system, and certainly local businesses are impacted in a variety of ways. The strain is unsurmountable. I've spent a lot of time talking to business owners, educators, even elected officials from the border, and the story's the same. The systems are beyond maximum capacity, and the impacts are significant. Now, from a business perspective, it is important to know that America relies on immigrant labor for a variety of industries: construction, agriculture, hospitality, manufacturing. In manufacturing alone, manufacturing is about a $3 trillion industry in America, and some 45% of the people who work in manufacturing are actually immigrants. So the impact of the situation that we have right now, where everything is kind of at a sudden stop, and we can't process the legal individuals we need to get them into the workforce in agriculture, in manufacturing. That has been an incredible strain. And every business person I'm talking to from south of the border, and now, I like to say that now every state is a border state, because you're seeing the impact, in the agricultural sector. We've got people complaining, housewives and families complaining about the cost of food, for example, the cost of vegetables. Well, this is a $300 billion industry in America, and 73% of the people who work in those industries that harvest those crops that ultimately end up on the American, table, 73% of those people are immigrants. But we can't process them, legally through the system right now because everything's bogged down, because of the backlog. Title 42 was used over 2.5 million times. That means 2.5 million people were turned away. Imagine if we had not been able to use Title 42, we'd have 2.5 million more people sitting on the border right now. There's already millions there, and the time to process them has grown from what used to be a handful of months at best. Now it's 4 years before they can get processed. So obviously we need Congress to get busy. We need this administration to listen to fair-minded people that are courageous enough to come forward with potential solutions. John Cornyn from Texas, Henry Cuellar from Texas, Kristen Sinema from Arizona. They've all come up with ideas that will help alleviate the immediate crisis and somehow allow us to continue to function with some kind of normality. But right now, it's a difficult time in America. And I think our Congress really needs to listen to the American people, certainly listen to American business, and get busy and find a workable solution.
Javier, as you mentioned, it sounds like every state is a border state. And Javier, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me. Have a good one.
And a panel of border security experts held a town hall in El Paso yesterday. The group talked with members of the community about the implications of the border crisis. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has the story.
This isn't about immigration. This is about border security.
That was the resounding message panelists sought to convey during Thursday's town hall in El Paso, Texas. Former Commissioner of U.S. Customs and Border Protection Mark Morgan says illegal immigration is not a victimless crime because limited resources meant to protect the nation's national security are pulled off the front line to deal with it. He says cartels exploit that vulnerability to smuggle drugs, criminals, and terrorists into the U.S.
We've literally handed operational control over to the cartels. This is not about immigration. This is about border security. This is about national security.
Morgan says the majority of illegal crossers sit down and wait for Border Patrol to come get them because they know they'll be released. That allows the cartels to operate freely while 90% of Border Patrol agents are processing them. But he says it's the gotaways that really concern him. Over 80,000 criminals trying to cross illegally have been arrested since Biden took office.
And among the 80,000, murderers, rapists, pedophiles, aggravated felons, and gang members, including 132 convicted murderers.
U.S. Border Patrol Chief Raul Ortiz told the House Homeland Security Committee in March that there's been around 1.5 million gotaways under President Biden. The panelists say that number is now closer to 1.7 million. Former ICE Director Tom Homan says with the end of Title 42, Border Patrol will be even more overwhelmed and more agents will be pulled off the front line.
It's about public safety, public health, and national security. Mark my word, I don't know how many terrorists have come across this border the last 2 years, but someday we're going to find out. And it's going to be a bad day for this nation.
Panelists said the most inhumane thing the U.S. can do for migrants is to have open borders.
Our compassion has been hijacked. Our compassion is misguided. If you really have compassion for those looking for a better life, shut down our borders, secure them, and enhance and improve our legal immigration process. That's going to save the lives of immigrants, and it's going to save the lives of Americans.
The panel members said if migrants are given hope that they'll be allowed to break the law and enter the U.S. illegally, they will sacrifice everything to try, and that it's up to Congress to fix it by creating more visa programs so people don't have to undertake such great risks. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
Mayor Eric Adams finds himself in the hot seat. He is facing a wave of criticism for suspending New York City's right to shelter policy. The policy has been in place since the 1970s. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on the ongoing immigration crisis.
The move comes amid masses of migrants looking to cross the southern border in the wake of Title 42. Adams is facing opposition to his plan to begin busing illegal immigrants out of New York City and into other counties. The mayor announced on Friday that the city would send up to 300 single adult men to 2 hotels in Rockland County and Orange County. Congressman Mike Lawler said on Fox News that New York has realized that being a sanctuary city doesn't work when 60,000 illegal immigrants come.
Now they can't stand the burden of it, and so they're trying to shift that to other municipalities.
Lawler says Adams called Southern governors morally bankrupt for not communicating and coordinating with the city when busing illegal immigrants there.
Meanwhile, he's doing exactly the same thing to these municipalities.
Adams disagrees. He drew a distinction on Fox News between his actions and the actions of Governor Greg Abbott.
We're paying for it. We're only taking volunteers. We are communicating with the officials up there.
The plan has been met with fierce resistance from county leaders who have declared a state of emergency and filed a restraining order. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Psychologists are trying to understand how social media affects teen health. Growing evidence shows it has all kinds of negative impacts, such as anxiety, depression, bullying, and exposure to inappropriate content. The American Psychological Association has come out with 10 recommendations based on current evidence. NTD's Colin Fredrickson has more.
The American Psychological Association has come out with an advisory that includes 10 recommendations regarding social media and teen health. The psychologists say this is a rapidly growing area of research and that it's very important to many people. These recommendations include adult monitoring during early adolescence, typically between ages 10 and 14. The advisory says this is critical because teen brains are undeveloped and highly sensitive at these ages. Parents should routinely make sure their kids are not addicted to social media. That is, when they use it so much that it interferes with their real lives. Another recommendation is that teens go through social media training.
A course on social media. Actually, you would need 2 courses, one for younger children and one for teens. But I think that concept is a good idea. However, I think it has to be very carefully monitored in terms of who is teaching it and what they are teaching.
Dr. Carol Lieberman is a pediatric psychiatrist. She says if the social media companies themselves are involved in the courses, it will influence the content. Examples of courses can be found in the digital citizenship curriculum from commonsense.org. There are lessons for kids from grades K through 12. They address a range of topics like privacy and security, your digital footprint, and relationships and communication. Courses are completely free and include videos, lesson plans, and assessments. Other recommendations. Parents should limit their teens' social media use so that it doesn't interfere with their sleep. Teens should try not to use social media for social comparison. The psychologists say this can lead to depression, especially among girls. Colin Fredrickson, NTD News.
A major move from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. For the first time ever, it wants to directly limit greenhouse gas emissions from power plants. This may greatly impact the industry that's giving us energy every day. NTD's Sean Marshall has more.
The EPA has announced ambitious plans to limit carbon emissions from power plants. This may force these plants to use carbon capture technology. This technology would capture their carbon emissions, preventing it from getting into the atmosphere. In the entire world, there's currently only one power plant that uses it at scale. The Boundary Dam Power Station in North America. For everyone else, the technology is just too expensive. This may make it difficult for power plants to follow the EPA's proposal. There are two big factors. One is that the technology has to scale, and the other is that the carbon has to be stored.
It has to be applied to all kinds of different power plants across the country. And the suppliers, all the people, how are we going to build all this stuff? That has to happen. And again, this is a very short time scale for utilities. It takes years to do this stuff.
Brett Bennett is a policy director at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. Bennett says it takes millions of dollars to build this equipment, which will be a big problem for power plants. And Bennett says storing the carbon after it's captured may be the bigger problem.
What do you do with the carbon once it's captured, right? So you have to build pipelines and infrastructure to bury it, sequester it is what they call it. Underground is going to be really, really expensive when it comes to trying to implement this.
Also, experts say this would raise energy prices. Brett Bennett, the energy expert we spoke to earlier, believes the EPA's proposal will be litigated and may eventually even enter the Supreme Court. Sean Marshall, NTD News.